Well, it isn't the ideal outcome for what we would all want, but based on the limitation of the proof that we had in this case, the ability to get Lonzie's body back and still get 2 decades of prison on Ruben Ebron was a good deal. It wasn't a great deal, but it was the deal that worked best for all the facts and circumstances of this case. Yes, if there had been any hope of finding Lonzie independently, then based on our experience, we knew we still wouldn't be able to prove the cause of death. Once any human body deteriorates, there's no tissue to examine, there's no brain injury that we can focus on, and 9 times out of 10 in these baby cases, they die from the internal injuries, for example, blunt force trauma to the head, but that's always proven not necessarily by the skull injury, but by the brain injuries and the subdural injuries. I think we finally knew when we couldn't put anything on Lana specifically all this time. You know, we were trying to continue to build the case. You know, we never filed the murder charges until after he offered to plea. So and they weren't murder charges, they were manslaughter charges. People don't tend to notice the difference between those two, but we couldn't put the death of the child charges on him until after he engaged in this plea bargain because it was dependent on his truthful testimony. Basically what he offered us, Kent, was a package deal to take the 20 years, which took 10 years off the time he was looking at to begin with on what we could prove, lead us to the body, and then have that kind of closure and go ahead and own up to the manslaughter of the child. And so that's why we engaged in this plea bargain. You know, we're going to have to look more into that now that we're through with his plea. Remember, still, you've got several adults in contact with this child throughout his life, and especially in these last months, weeks, and days of his life. You have 2 people who lied consistently, and his lies were well documented from the beginning. The faking the abduction from the car, the video of him running away from the car where he left it. You have her having somewhat of an alibi, being at work. And we know the time she got to work and the time she got back from work. So it's all a very difficult set of facts. But Kent, it's not unusual in these baby cases where there's finger pointing and there's more than one adult who has custody of the child. And in this case, it was numerous adults. After seeing him take the detectives out, you know, we were there, we followed them, and seeing how diligently he searched for that baby. And I'm telling you, it was deep, dark woods. It was pitch black out there. I think that Director Hackney alluded to how he was in his jail garb, flat shoes, socks. They were in ankle-deep water. He never gave up searching for that baby, and he also seemed contrite. I hope his being contrite equates to remorse, but I really don't know. It does. It does matter to us. I think the way Tom Hackney said it today is the best. The Ruben Ebron we all saw the night he took us to the location of the body is the way we would like to see it happen from the beginning. And I contrasted this case with one where we were able to put a man on death row for killing a baby, and only because the evidence was overwhelming and he was on probation for hurting a baby. So that's the one case in my 34 years where we've been able to take a child abuse case, which is what this could be, but we'll never be able to prove it, and turn it into a first-degree murder. Yeah, and put the person on death row. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but putting him on death row, that's what everybody wants. I've seen the comments and heard the comments, oh, he should get the needle. Well, anybody who hurts a child should. That's not the way our laws are set up. That's not the way they're set up.
But it seems like maybe there wouldn't have been a
there wouldn't have
bigger
been
trial without more evidence.
Without him leading us to the body, there wouldn't have been more evidence because it was still who did what to Lonzie. Only after we discovered Lonzie's remains and had them examined by our medical examiner and a forensic anthropologist, then we knew that we were right. We couldn't prove the cause of death. There was too much deterioration, and the injuries to the bones, the actual damage to the bones, could not be explained as a cause of death because of Lonzie's body being out in the elements, animals, scavengers, the whole thing. It's a very tragic case, Kent, very tragic. It's bittersweet. I too believe that bringing that child's body back to the community was important. We would not necessarily have made a deal like that if we had had any hope of finding the body on our own, but you saw the extent of the search in which our sheriff's office and other agencies helped our sheriff's office search. They searched everywhere. This scene was at least another mile further, I think, almost from where we had been. But for him taking us in there, this child would never have been found. And I do believe the police did everything they could to test Lana's credibility as to whether or not she knew where the child was. And to our knowledge, to this day, she did not know that's where the child was. Well, a lot of people exacerbate what wouldn't be as big a crime if they would just come forward and tell the truth. And that's what we think everybody should do, you know, face the consequences, and they might not be as severe. Somebody asked me earlier today, do we think he left the body out there so long knowing we wouldn't be able to determine the cause of death? Well, if that were the case, he would have come forward after a month or two, you know, so I don't know. I don't know whether or not, it's hard not to judge their lifestyle, his lifestyle. He leaves his own 3 kids and wife to go move in with a woman who has kids, and they're living virtually day to day, spending what money they earn on drugs. It's very difficult to like either one of these people. The law still applies, due process still applies, and the Constitution still applies. So no matter how much we don't like them or the community doesn't like them, they still have a right to be tried for what we can prove, and we could never, ever have proven first-degree murder. Look what happened in Casey Anthony. I know you're familiar with that case. The prosecution had to charge alternatively in that case, and the jury came back. They couldn't conclude that she was guilty beyond a reasonable doubt on either theory, premeditated murder, child abuse murder, or aggravated manslaughter of a child. Just how difficult these cases are, that anytime a child is in the custody of more than one adult and nobody's confessing, where we can match the injuries to the child to the confession, then it's a difficult case. And we face this all the time. Like I said to the public earlier today, they know Lonzie's name because the media and JSO had to make his name known to try to find him. But we have so many of these cases where babies have died, and I would challenge the public to tell me any of their names. It's tough on us all the time. This time the public sharing our sorrow at the loss of a baby at the hands of any adult. It's always a sorrow. It breaks our hearts. Well, see, the problem with that is, look at the credibility rules for a witness. It would be very tough to use him against her because, again, she had that somewhat of an alibi by being at work. And this testimony he gave was not inconsistent that it was an accidental drowning. So her failure to, zealously guard her child, the offense to which she pled basically, might have been all we could have proven to begin with.